Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Inside Groove right here on Northwest Access TV. I'm Nick Mumley, and as usual, alongside me today, Dustin Tanner. And Dustin, we took last week off because it was championship week for Vermont sports, and I know I was super busy, so were you.
I don't think either of us would have been able to come in and actually have time to do a show last week. And we get 2 weeks of content, to talk about instead of one. So high school championship week, always fun. Congrats to the MVU Lady T-Birds for winning that title. Yeah. Always fun to watch our local teams go down and compete at Gutterson or Patrick Gym.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But the Inside Groove is back after taking a week off. We've been away for 2 weeks. We missed the Phoenix race, and now we just had California. So the West Coast swing now over. We'll talk about what went on out west as NASCAR now heads back. They'll be at Martinsville this week. We'll preview that race. Kyle Busch won both the races while we were gone at Phoenix and California to get up to 200 career wins. We'll talk about the importance of that, where he ranks where he compares to to Richard Petty. Definitely above Kyle Petty.
He's just a little bit better than Kyle Petty.
But we'll talk about that. That's been the hot debate topic, the MJ versus LeBron of NASCAR, per se. Kyle Busch versus Richard Petty. I don't think they're comparable, but we'll get into that deeper as the show goes on. So once again, Martinsville coming up this week. We've got our first short track race of the year, and the last thing we'll talk about tonight is, are we sick of the aero package? Because it has been, in my opinion, a massive failure. So we'll talk about, where NASCAR goes from here at this point with the aero package. Because at this point, I don't think anybody is thinking of it too fondly at this point. So we'll see how that goes. But let's get into the races that we've missed since we were gone on our break. Phoenix was the first one. We saw a couple of good races out there. Kyle Busch, though, he won the Cup race at Phoenix for his 199th career win. How did we feel about the second race on the new Phoenix configuration? Is it better than before?
Well, I like it because it's a tire wear race, and I think you had a lot of teams that struggled with tires, and I think this was a track where the new package was better because Phoenix is one straightaway and all corners. So having that speed in the corners, it was a fun race to watch. The restarts were really interesting, and yes, when they got packed out, it was single file, but for the most part, it was a good quality type of race. Enough cautions to keep you interested, enough stoppage to bunch them back together and, make it fun to watch. I like it so far, 2 races in a row where it's been watchable. I'm judging NASCAR, and I guess I'm judging it on the curve of, was this watchable, right?
Right.
And for me, the Phoenix race, that was a watchable race. I could take that Phoenix race any time of the year, and I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
So, it was a good race. Kyle Busch, he did dominate, but it didn't feel like he dominated because I guess we're so used to seeing Kevin Harvick dominate there that it was surprising to see him not.
Right.
And also Ryan Blaney had a really good run there, so it was really fun to watch that too and the strategies play out. Daniel Hemrick was up in the top 5 at a point because he took tires or didn't take tires. Jimmy Johnson, the revival of Jimmy Johnson having a good run there. Yeah. A lot of storylines, a lot of comers and goers. So overall, a good race, I'd say.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. 9 cautions in this race, too. By far the most of the season. Yeah. So, there was a decent amount of, excitement. This wasn't the kind of race like Las Vegas where, I watch I try to watch every single NASCAR race through and through, especially Cup. Las Vegas is the first race in a long time that I actually took a famous NASCAR nap during it.
Let me tell you, Nick, welcome to the adult world because you are a young man in the sense of, you have the energy to sit through and watch all these things, but there is nothing quite better than the NASCAR nap. There is nothing better than sitting in that recliner and just saying, all right, you snooze and you wake up for the last 35 laps and you have a soda or something and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I'm up now. Nothing better than it. Like the golf nap. The golf nap is great.
But, yeah, it's just Phoenix was kind of a breath of fresh air because we haven't really had a good race since Daytona. And I think NASCAR needed it. NASCAR's fans needed it because, this new package has failed miserably. Kyle Busch, though, like we said, led 177 of the 312 laps. Good day for him. He's won the last 2 Phoenix races now. But the big surprise for me in this one was Kevin Harvick struggling. Not able. He was able to put the car in the top 10. Wasn't really up front as much as we're used to seeing him race up front there. I made the prediction at the beginning of the year that Kevin Harvick was going to take a major step backwards this year.
Well,
do you think that's going to happen?
I said to you, no. And I said an empathetic no. And I have to give credit where credit is due, Nick. I think you're right. I think Kevin Harvick is not as fast this year, and I think I was expecting him to win one of the races on the West Coast swing. Right. I was saying, all right, Kevin Harvick will win one of the races or have good showings in all three, and he hasn't had a good showing yet this year. So I don't know if it's a new package, but Stuart Haas doesn't seem as fast as they
Stuart
once
Haas,
were. But Erik Jones is running well, so I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on with them. But definitely a little surprising to see how one Ford team is dominating right now, and the Ford team with the better drivers isn't dominating at the point.
Yeah, that's a little bit surprising to me as well. I think, we look at Kevin Harvick, he had 3 wins by this time last year.
Yeah, he
did. This year, he hasn't really run up front all that much. He's third in the standings. He's finished in 5 races. He has 4 top 10s. So Kevin Harvick has not fallen off the face of the earth yet. But he's only led 133 laps. His average finished 9.4. So,
That's a steep drop off for the first 5 races.
Compared to his first 5 races from last year, it hasn't been nearly as good for him. I think he'll still be there. For whatever reason, Stuart Haas has just kind of fallen behind with this new package. Penske has grasped it and just, ran away with. I think Penske still is the best team in the sport right now.
I want to throw a quick little curveball at you. Do you think Penske could put 3 of their 4 cars, three cars in the Final Four this year?
I think they can. I think they will put 2.
I'm pretty sure they'll put 1. I'm pretty sure they'll put 2.
I would confidently bet that they put 2 with Keselowski.
I'd confidently bet they put 2, but I would throw $20 on they put 3 in. Blaney's
good. Blaney's going to win races, though. You need to win races to get to the Final Four.
If you take out Blaney's bad finish at Daytona, he has a 22nd, 22nd, 3rd, and 5th. The last 2 races, he's been 3rd and 5th. So I'm not
sure. He's picking it up. There's no doubt. Phoenix, he ran up front. I believe he was the pole sitter for that race.
Pole sitter and ran a couple stages.
And started 2second on...
that doesn't count. That does not count.
Sunday.
I'm not counting that.
That's true.
We'll get to that. That doesn't count.
We'll talk about that. But, so that team's starting to figure it out as well. But, I'll believe it when I see it with Blaney. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago on our last show. I think Blaney, I came out and said, Ryan Blaney, you need to step it up. Your teammates are running this well. I think Blaney's working his way there. I think he's in a much better place than he was 2-3 weeks ago, obviously. Do I think he's at the same level as Logano, Keselowski?
No,
but you need to be running at the top level to make the championship.
I think you have to grade on the curve because, he has a team stable with 2 champions. And a driver in Joey Logano who is the second best driver in NASCAR right now and is starting to make a Hall of Fame case for himself. Like Joey Logano, if he retired today, you would put him in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Daytona 500 champion, sport champion. Like you can't be as much, he's very accomplished. So I think sometimes when you look at Ryan Blaney and you look at the scope of Penske and you say, well, why is he not Brad Keselowski or why is he not Joey Logano? It's really hard. But watching that California race, I was like, I could see Penske putting 3 of these guys into the Final Four, or at least the Final 8.
I think I think that's fair. But you talk about the Final Four level. You have to race at a Hall of Fame level to be in the hunt for the Final Four. I mean, you look at Chase Elliott last year. He had such a good playoffs, but Chase Elliott is not the equipment he's in is not the greatest, and he's still not reached his full potential as a driver. You have to be at the very top of your game, equipment-wise, and talent-wise, skill-wise, to be in the championship for. You don't get gifted that unless you're Tyler Reddick.
There it is.
And. It's in the Cup Series. It's so tough. I don't think Blaney. I think Blaney's an Elite 8 driver right now. I don't think he's a Final Four driver as we talk about our NASCAR bracketology here. Moving on though, Chevy. has been. Can you consider them a big surprise right now, failing to finish in the top 5 for the second time this year?
And I'm going to tell you why I don't. You look in the Toyota. Who is the engine producer for Toyota? TRD.
Yeah.
It's a unified engine producer. Who is the engine producer for Ford?
Roush Yates.
And just Roush Yates.
Right.
Who is the engine producer for Chevy?
You got Hendrick. You got Earnhardt. Does Earnhardt Childress still?
Yeah, ECR. So you have 2 programs, and this is where I see the sport divide in the sense of Chevy, instead of having all their engines be under one roof or one umbrella, which has worked wonders for Ford.
But they also have the most teams.
But you look at Ford, so Roush Yates, and I did the numbers on this. Roush Yates makes the engines for Front Row Motorsports, so that's 3. They do make a Go Fast engines, I believe, so that's 4. Stuart Haas, that's 8. Penske, that's 3. Wood Brothers, that's 4. So that's 12 teams of engines. So you look at Hendrick Motorsports, that's 4. You look at their JTG engine, so that's 6. You look at Ganassi's engines, so that's 8. And then you look at Richard Childress, so that's around 12 as well. So, and granted there are some other Chevy teams that are just kicking around there, but none of them are really competitive. So I say, who is the program that is struggling? Chevy is struggling because they don't have the power capacities of these other teams.
Yeah.
And you're looking at, they came out with the Camaro body. They were bad last year, and they are somehow worse on a package that has less horsepower. They are somehow worse this year, And I say, well, Richard Childress Racing looks really fast in qualifying, but they can't pull it off in the race. Hendrick has enough speed in the race to get, Jimmy Johnson to top 10 and be a fringe candidate. If we brought the engine program under one roof for both of those teams and got out of the 1990s, early 2000s of, well, we're all going to compete and Papa Childress and Hendrick, they don't like each other, they're rivals, it would be much better for Chevy, because right now Chevy hasn't won a championship in a while, and Chevy's not going to win a championship this year. I would put $100 right now saying that, unless if it's a fluke win, Chevy's not winning the championship this year. They're going to be lucky to get a driver in the top 4. They're going to be lucky to get a driver in the top 8. And that's probably going to be Chase Elliott or Kurt Busch. And the only reason why Kurt Busch has been so good is because who is the king of driving awful cars? It is Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch made the Phoenix 51 ride a competitive ride.
He's the reason Furniture Row.
Kurt Busch made Furniture Row happen. Kurt Busch, you can give him anything, and as long as it's a top 40 car, he will find a way to pull off top 20s. And those cars are not fast. And this is Kurt Busch. He's a good driver. He's at the top of the sport right now. But nobody else is running well. Austin Dillon had a surprisingly good run.
Yeah. The Earnhardt cars have been fast. I mean, Daniel Hemricks looked good.
They looked.
Austin Dillon has won a pole, and he's been, even though you're not going to count it, he's been up there for a couple of other poles.
They have speed on Friday and Saturday.
They just need to figure out how to get it into the race.
But that's the thing that's really interesting right now is one program has speed on Friday and Saturday. The other program doesn't have speed at all.
Right.
And I look at Hendrick Motorsports, and they are, it'd be different if Hendrick was spending less, but they are spending millions of dollars a year on their program. And, they're not getting good results. Yes, they would have everybody, yes, Chase, Jimmy, and Alex would be in the chase right now. But, we're 4 races in. Alex Bowman's finishes 11, 15, 11, 35, 21. Jimmy Johnson this year, 9 restrictor plate, 24, 19, 8, 17. Chase Elliott, who is the second coming of God for rednecks.
Oh, my God.
To the second coming of Jesus, the redneck Christ. 17,
redneck
19,
Christ.
9, 14, and 11. So Chase Elliott has one top 10 in the first 5 races, and it's barely a top 10.
He has been an afterthought all year long. For him, they were talking about it in the race in California. He was running in the last spot for points in the stage, running in 10th, and that's a big deal for them. The way this season's gone.
And it should not.
Right.
It's Hendrick Motorsports. It is the overall king of the sport for the last 20 years. So the idea of saying, oh man, if Chase Elliott can get those stage points in 10th place, it's a good day. Like, that is a sad, sad moment for any dominant team.
This is, like, it's crazy to think about because you look back, 10 years ago when Hendrick was at the top. This is like Chase Elliott not getting top 10s in the top Hendrick car is like looking at Jeff Gordon 2006 and Jeff Gordon finishing 15th every race. It's just kind of unfathomable the way Hendrick has dominated the sport over the last 20 or so years with Gordon and then Jimmy Johnson and then Dale Jr. coming in. To see them go down the way that they have has just, it's kind of sad and it's kind of shocking because you never really thought you'd see this out of Hendrick.
No, you never thought you would see it out of Hendricks. ECR was kept around longer by Kevin Harvick, out driving everything we have now recognized. Well, Richard Childress Racing, actually, not ECR. And then Chevy's just slow, and Chevy's not putting the money into the sport that other, Toyota has a farm system where they are developing drivers and have 5 good cars.
Ford what does Chevy have in the Xfinity series right now?
Yeah, but nothing. Chevy doesn't develop drivers. Yeah. They've developed maybe William Byron and maybe Chase Elliott, developed.
They didn't develop William Byron, though. William Byron was a Toyota guy that left because Toyota wouldn't, didn't have room to have the seats.
So it's like, them. Chevy's developed one driver. Their cars are slower. The product is
Chase Elliott is the last guy Chevy developed.
The product that Chevy is driving is currently being outdriven by a Ford development driver in Kurt Busch.
Right.
It's a sad state of affairs. And if I am Pop, at Richard Childress Racing, and if I'm Ricky at Rick Hendrick, I sit down and I say to myself, we sit down in a boardroom and say, look, we're getting our backsides kicked right now by these other programs. We have to pool some sort of resources to figure. We have to have some type of technical relationship to see. Oh, you're fast here, we're fast here. What if we put them together? Maybe we could have a fast car. And it's not going to happen. And Chevy's going to continue to fall behind. Right.
So before we move on from Phoenix here, probably the best story of the weekend, as good as the race was, we had a NASCAR fight. Michael McDowell and Daniel Suarez got into it, which was kind of surprising because so far up to this point, Michael McDowell has been the I'm sponsored by a Christian music radio station.
Not anymore.
Not anymore though. I don't do any sort of bad stuff.
I'm Michael McDowell. My favorite color is vanilla.
Right. I ride 30th place and, get the job done and praise God. And Daniel Suarez has been just, the kind of quiet, overhyped driver who's come in from Mexico.
I'm not going to say he's overhyped. He's a champion in multiple series, but he's a quiet guy.
Right,
he's not a guy that you think of like, if I had to put money on who was going to get in a NASCAR
These are the last 2 people you would expect
to get in a fight. They're not even the top 15 of people I'd be like, they're going to throw bones. And then the fact that Suarez he beat McDowell. He beat McDowell in the fight. It's like, if I was going to put money on people who will beat the piss out of people in the NASCAR garage, Daniel Suarez was not in my top 20.
Right.
He is now.
And then Daniel Suarez coming out and saying, I got in fights all the time in elementary school. And then my favorite part of that was, I wouldn't say my favorite part, but the part I laughed at the most was NASCAR Facebook comments. I don't know if you ever look at NASCAR Facebook comments.
I try not to, but I do.
But there was well over 10 people saying that we should deport Daniel Suarez because he got into fights in elementary school.
Oh man, that's an aspect.
I'm like, come on, people. But anyway, moving on. I thought Daniel Suarez did really well in this fight. This was an exciting kind of jolt of energy in a time where there's no good racing.
Won a fight, and it was a qualifying. Daniel Suarez, he was perfectly reasonable in his assumption because he missed the bubble by like 0.2 of a second because McDowell was slowed up in front of him, and so he went up to McDowell and he's like, "Dude, what's going on?" And then McDowell, and what is the ultimate little man move, keeps his helmet on.
Right.
All right. So Suarez just knocks him over.
And then tries to he's trying to take off Suarez's shoe.
After the crew chief of him was holding him back.
Right.
So it's like McDowell not only fights dirty with the helmet on, he also tried to pull a dirty move after he had been knocked down. And Suarez, I've always liked Suarez. I think I think he's underrated in the sense of I think he's going to be a champion at this level? No. Do I think he can be a competent guy who gets some top tens and is fun to watch? Yes. So it was fun to see him just like stand up and be like, hey, look, if you're not going to give me respect, like I'm not going to take it. And it was nice. I like that passion out of our drivers. I like when, a guy's like, this dude blocked me. I'm mad at this dude. I want to go put this dude in his place. And it was cool to see a younger driver do that for once.
Yeah, I loved it. Gained a lot of respect for Daniel Suarez. I liked him anyway coming in. Ever since he's been at Stewart-Haas, I think that, this is, I look at him as a completely different driver than he was the last couple of years. I think, he was underappreciated at Joe Gibbs, wasn't given good equipment at all. And,
he
now,
was in that fourth hole.
Right.
And that's the hardest team to be in.
Now Martin Truex is feeling that now. I mean, Truex has not really been great. Truex is 7th in points, Dustin.
Truex is 7th in points, but Erik Jones is the slow driver at He's 13th right now, and he's not doing well. He's had a couple rough weeks, and Erik Jones,
hot take possibility here is Erik Jones on the hot seat.
Oh, he's on the hot seat going into this year, especially after Denny Hamlin won the Daytona 500.
Isn't that crazy how Erik Jones was like the next big thing, and then all of a sudden he just kind of hasn't really done anything?
I don't know what it is about Joe Gibbs Racing, but they can develop talent, but they can't have the talent pan out at the next level. We saw it with Joey Logano. Joey Logano was the next big thing, and then he flamed out at Joe Gibbs, and now he is everything Joey Logano was advertised to be.
Right.
I don't know if it's like a Kyle Busch curse in the sense that they got the best prospect NASCAR's ever seen to sign with them. Right. So it's like now you can't develop anybody. And Denny Hamlin, he's having a good year right now. You look at Denny Hamlin. 1st, 11th, 10th, 5th, 7th. You cannot say to that man with a full head of sponsorship, we're going to kick you out for that. You cannot say that. Erik Jones right now.
Erik Jones brings, I think, maybe 1 or 2 races with Reese's Fine Foods.
Well, Erik Jones is the Toyota driver. He brings the Toyota. Toyota is backed him, but it's going to be really hard to put Erik Jones and Christopher Bell next to each other and say, one of them is going to have to go, and it's probably going to be Erik Jones. I'm willing to bet what they will do next year, if they can, is find him a second seat in a Toyota car. And then when Hamlin decides to retire, if Jones is doing well, bring him back. And I feel bad for Erik Jones because he's kind of been the casualty of Toyota not having enough seats because he was brought up to the 77, and it was like, all right, we're bringing you up to the 77. Here's a second team just starting out of nowhere. Make do with it. And then the 77 was closing, and it was like, all right.
He ran well with his 77.
He did, and then it was going to be like, all right.
There was a lot of promise after that year. When he came over to the 20 car, we were like, okay, this is this is his ride now. He's going to come in, and I fully expected him to win races right away.
And I feel bad for him because it's like he was like, all right, settle in at the 77. All right, we're bringing you back in house. Right. And then last year they brought him back in house. He didn't do bad last year. He did win that race at Daytona, but he was an okay driver. And now it's like, all right, you've had a year out of house, you've had a year in house. You got to do better, or we're getting you out. This is all speculation, obviously, but like that idea of he's not going to have a home until he actually has a home. They need to give him a place where he can develop.
Yeah, like you said, that's the problem with Toyota bringing in all of these prospects is you can only have 4 cars in the Cup Series. It's like I've said this comparison before. It's not like Major League Baseball where you have 25 spots on the Major League roster. You have 4 spots. You can't go out and develop 10, 15 prospects and expect to all be able and all keep them.
You either need to make more spots, or you need to know that your developmental is going to be gone.
Right. So I do want to talk about the qualifying stuff here. We talked about McDowell and Suarez in qualifying.
Let's talk about California.
California qualifying might have been the biggest debacle I've ever seen in my adult life.
So for fans that don't know, NASCAR has a system where everybody goes out and qualifies at the same time. So at California on Friday, everybody went out, they qualified for the first round, second round, and then the third round of the last 12 drivers, nobody made a time because nobody got out quick enough. So for the first time in NASCAR history, the first 12 spots were not set on the time in the round. It was just set on the previous time, which is a disaster for the sport to the point where they have said, we are going to change the qualify format going into Texas. And I knew this was coming in some way because the idea behind it is that you don't want to be the first car out.
Right.
And when you don't want to be the first car out, nobody's going to go out, basically.
Right.
And I would love to know your thoughts on it because it makes me mad as a fan.
Well, what needs to happen is you take back the old system. It's as simple as that. I mean, they had a really good system back in the day. Daytona is the only qualifying I will watch every year because, I think, single car qualifying is the one thing NASCAR has these days that fans can kind of relate to. Looking back when, things were a lot better, single car qualifying is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I understand with the charter system that it makes things a lot less, high stakes, but single car qualifying is good. I love it. You've got Fox has the awesome technology now to show the Fox Track system where they put the GPS on the car and you see like the line and how far the pole car is ahead of the car that's qualifying at that time. I think that's super cool technology. That's super fun to watch. Daytona pole qualifying was so much fun. And, I think part of that's because, it was the first time we saw cars on track this year, which is always a good time. But I don't know. There's something about single car qualifying that just brings it back to the roots for me because, NASCAR has taken away a lot of the speed from these guys. NASCAR's not all about pure speed right now. I think that single car qualifying is a opportunity for fans to just look at it and say, okay, these cars are going incredibly fast. Just take in the sheer speed of everything, the sheer power. Single car qualifying shows people, which teams are doing the best performance-wise, and I think that's really cool.
Well, I like the idea of single car qualifying, but I do also like the group qualifying. So it's like, on one hand, I like the idea of it being racy. On the other hand, I like the qualifying. My bold take would be make heat races, make like 10-lap heat races, which would be cool. Which would never happen because
that would be just
why dare we race against each other in NASCAR? But I like the idea of a heat race to decide. You random draw 3 groups of 10, you heat race for it. But I think if they're going to do this package, it's not fair to that first car out, and this is not putting it on a timer unless if you put it on a full 60-minute timer. You do one of two things here. Just go back to single car qualifying. Or you could run it like a practice session in the sense of you put 30 minutes on the board for qualifying. Whoever has the fastest time after 30 minutes, you can go on, make adjustments to your car. I would love to see what qualifying would be like if it was a practice session type of feel where you have an hour, put up the fastest speed by the end of the hour, see what happens.
I disagree with you on where I think that, single car qualifying, you go out there, you put 2 good laps in, and that's it. I think that, it puts more pressure on the driver and the team to make sure everything's absolutely perfect. You give these guys an hour to go put out a really fast lap. What fun is that going to be?
I think, it's fun from the technical aspect of it. It's like, you get to see these teams really push the boundaries.
From a fan aspect, who's going to watch that? I mean, it's just the excitement of it is gone. I think at that point.
No, and I think single car qualifying. I think they'll go back to it, and I think that's where they need to go. Don't change something that's good. Like just go to it, just do it.
All right, so let's get to California here. Past qualifying, Kyle Busch, winner of the Auto Club 500 at California, or 400 or whatever it is these days. Ending the West Coast swing, we saw him get his 200th career NASCAR victory. Now, disclaimer, only 53 of those wins came in the Cup Series. But, a lot of people are saying, it doesn't matter. Richard Petty won a lot of his races on Wednesday nights in North Dakota, so racing against 10 other cars. So, it equals out. I think it's really interesting on, how these guys go because they're, right up there, similar in total starts across the series, but I don't think they're comparable.
I think they're comparable in the sense of 200 is a big number, but when, look at Richard Petty's best season. Let's cherry pick a Richard Petty season. Pick a number between 1960 and 1970, Nick.
1964.
1964, Richard Petty won 9 races. How many races did Richard Petty compete in, Nick?
Probably 40 to 50.
No, 62.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He competed in 61 of 62 races. So, you want to expand that. I wish
And
I
that's
could
the
put this
thing.
on
Like,
screen
you look at it, 62 races. That is
and he's like,
literally how many races Kyle Busch is running this year.
And you look at it's like site
Less than that,
Concord, which is a
probably,
250 lap race. Augusta, Jacksonville,
Right.
Savannah, Riverside. That's a track that's okay. Daytona, Richmond, Bristol, Greenville, Winston-Salem. 200 lap races, 100 lap races,
Right.
40 lap races. Like you look at the schedule that Richard Petty won against, and he won 200 races, but of the 200 races he won,
it's like if Kyle Busch
wins are padded.
Right. It's like if Kyle Busch comes down to Thunder Road and, wins, which obviously he didn't do when he came down to Thunder Road.
No.
But, it's very similar to, just going to a small short track, entering in the 50-lap feature race, and going out and smoking everybody and then having it count as a Cup Series win.
And that's why I don't like Richard Petty's total. I think the total of Parsons, which is 105, I think that's the total we can shoot for in the modern era. I think that's the
talking
total.
About David Pearson?
David Pearson, not Parsons, wrong guy. But that's the total I think when I look at, all right, it's 105 wins. That's the total I think he needs to get to, and he is halfway there. But like when he says 200 wins, 200 of anything is an accomplishment. So I give him credit. Like, what would we say if a football coach, won 200 games and 100 of them were at the college level? If Nick Saban comes up to high school, comes up to the NFL and wins, 75 games, it's like, was Nick Saban the most dominant coach? Well, he only won some of his games in the NFL. No, Kyle Busch is a dominant driver. I think he's in the top 10 of all time. And I think celebrating that 200th win like it should be a 200th win is very special. I think he'll get the 300. I really do. Yeah,
I agree with you. I don't know how much longer he races. And I don't know about 300. Because he said he's going to stop racing in Xfinity at 100 wins. So that's like seven more wins away. So you only get that. I think he has the chance to win 50 more races in the Cup Series. And then I really don't think that he only races 2 or 3.
I don't think he's stopping at 100. I think he'll win 25 to 30 more Xfinity races. But I think he'll win 20 more truck races. And these are sponsorship commitments too. Right. I think these will be races where it's like, I think he can chunk up another 30, 40 wins in the lower series just on sponsorship obligations alone.
And nonetheless here, we need to celebrate what Kyle Busch has done because this is incredible. I've seen a lot of backlash against Kyle Busch here. People instantly comparing him to Petty and saying, he'll never be the greatest of all time. It's not comparable. This is a completely different era, completely different circumstances. NASCAR's a completely different sport than it was, when Petty raced. This is like comparing, J.D. Martinez to Babe Ruth. It doesn't work because so much was different in the game of baseball when Babe Ruth played to present day. So, it just doesn't make sense to compare them. I think it needs to be celebrated because, like you said, 200 wins is an incredibly hard feat to do. For a race car driver to win 200 races, no matter what the level.
I don't think we'll see it again in our lifetimes.
In the time that Kyle Busch has done it. Because remember, Kyle Busch is like only 33, 34 years old.
Unless if they lessen restrictions on how many races you can run again.
Right.
But I don't think we'll...
But I don't think we'll ever see it because...
No.
I think you even look at Kevin Harvick. Back before they restricted these drivers, Kevin Harvick ran a lot of Xfinity races, and he still does up until last year. They have pretty much the same number of starts in the Xfinity series. Busch has 94 wins, 348 starts. Harvick has 47 wins and 346. So, 2 starts difference, Busch has almost double the wins. So, I just think that, while it is the Xfinity series, I think that just goes to show how good of a driver Kyle Busch is, even above probably the second best driver in the sport right now when you look at career path, second or third, wherever you want to put Jimmy Johnson. Harvick is right there, but Busch is just so far ahead of these guys. I think, Kyle Busch, what we're looking at right now with Busch is just an absolute legend of this sport. It's time, people, we talked about how, he's had his problems personally, and he's always been kind of a hothead, and he's dealt with that. I think he's moved on from that. I think it's time for fans to move on from that. I don't think they ever will, but I think it's time for fans to move on from hating Kyle Busch and just respecting the greatness that he is.
I think the fans will move on when he comes towards the Jimmy Johnson twilight of his career.
Right.
But I think for right now, the Kyle Busch, Dale Earnhardt sitting down talking on the podcast last year, it helped a little. You can definitely tell fan perception started to change just a little bit.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to get to that top of that hill where it's like, all right, he's just one of the best ever. Like, he's one of the top 10 drivers. Like, you can hate him because you hate him. But then again, it's like, we want personalities in our sport. Kyle Busch is what we want. Like, that's who we want. That's what we want.
So, before we move on to this week's news, I do want to...
Are we going to talk about how much California sucked at a race, or are we just going to ignore that?
No, it was a bad race, but and that kind of brings up my question. West Coast swing here was completely terrible.
Yep.
I think that, out of a solid 10 stars, the West Coast swing for the second straight year got maybe a 1 or a 2. And
I'll give it 3 stars. If we're on the 10th star, we'll give it a 3.5 star. It could have been worse.
All of that, and I think all of those 3.5 stars come from Phoenix.
I think 3 of the stars come from Phoenix.
Las Vegas was, like I said, Las Vegas, first race I've fallen asleep during in a very long time. California, I don't know.
I watched it.
California, Selection Sunday was Sunday with college basketball. I'm always a big college basketball fan this time of year. Really into it. I think that played a part in it. But California, I watched the race, the full recording of the race Monday afternoon. But Sunday, I really didn't think of the race until maybe 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Like I saw that Kyle Busch won, but I just knew that I wasn't really missing a whole lot race-wise, and that's kind of a sad point. But NASCAR, we see them go to this West Coast swing 3 races into the year, and I get the timing of it because this is when you want to go to California and Arizona because this is when the weather is going to be the best, and you don't want to put these races. You don't want to race at unfortunately they already race at Las Vegas in the playoffs, but you don't want to put California in the playoffs. Because
the Las Vegas playoff race is good because it's hot, it's slick, and it's fall, and it's a better track temperature than the spring race. So, the Las Vegas race last year was one of the better playoff races because it was so unpredictable. The West Coast swing is bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. I think you need to add Fontana. I really do. I think you need to add, not Fontana. You need to add
Sonoma.
Sears Point. Yeah, Sonoma, Sears Point. Sears Point Raceway. Is that what they call it?
That's what they called it up until 2002, I think.
Hey, now it's still Sears Point to me.
Okay.
It's also the Dodge 350. No,
the Dodge Save Mart 350.
Yeah, bud. I think that's one of the things you could do to help the West Coast swing, because putting a road course in there when it's beautiful at the road course and the grass is green, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And also, I don't understand why they go out there in the middle of the year for no reason at all. It never has made sense to me why it's like, we're going to go all the way west for a week. Okay, now we're going all the way back to Daytona or Michigan. Throw it in there. Also, find a short track on the West Coast. Make it a 5-race West Coast swing with a short track or road course, your 2.5-mile mega speedway, your Phoenix, your intermediate, and then your Las Vegas betting race. That'd make the West Coast swing a lot more fun, I'd bet.
Well, here's what I think NASCAR should do, and I think that there's an opportunity for this to happen because we've heard how Steve Phelps fully plans on changing the schedule. Probably 2 years from now. I think that you make NASCAR a tour. Like your favorite band. You start Daytona, and you go to Atlanta, you go to Texas.
No, I don't think you go to Atlanta. I think what you do is you start at Daytona. Speed Weeks is an event of itself, and then I think you go out west.
Yeah, and then you work your way back. I think you go to Daytona, then you go to Texas, and then you go out, and then you go to Phoenix, and then the track's out west, and then you go back up. You come back to the central part of the country. Maybe you put a Kentucky in there, maybe one of the Tennessee races. That would be a good opportunity for Martinsville, Bristol, and then you kind of work your way up, and then for the second part of the season, you make your way back down, and you do it again. And I think that. I think, it's kind of crazy, but I think NASCAR should consult Jeff Gluck and his race polls.
They should.
So if you're unfamiliar with it, Jeff Gluck, who's one of our favorite writers on the show here, does a poll after every race for his website. Was this a good race? Yes or no on Twitter. And it's fascinating to go back and see the fan reaction. And these polls get thousands of votes every single week, and it's great to go back, see the results. I think if tracks have a race where it was 75% or more, was this a good race? Yes, I think they should deserve 2 races. If not, then no.
I don't agree with that necessarily because sometimes the track is better because it has one race. Case in point, New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's true.
What I would do for NASCAR, all right, so your first 2 weeks is speed weeks. It's a mega event. And then from speed weeks, you go out west. We go out west and we start at, we go to Fontana. So it's the 2-mile California track. And then we go to Sonoma. And then it's the road course. Then we go down to Phoenix. And then we go to Las Vegas. And then we go to Texas. Now we come back east because we're moving our way to Texas. We're moving back east. And then it's short track time, right? It is a combination of, and this would help weather-wise too because the weather is not great at the beginning of the year. It goes Bristol, it goes Martinsville, it goes Richmond. And then after that, you do your Southern Roots Tour, which would be, Atlanta. Then you put Kentucky in there. And then you go to Talladega. And then you go to Charlotte. And then after Charlotte, we're at Memorial Day at that point.
Yeah.
Then you go your NASCAR Heads North Tour in the sense of you go to Dover for the first time, you go to Pocono, you go to New Hampshire, you add the Montreal Road Course because
That'd
you
be
should.
So cool.
You should, and you add the Montreal Road Course, and then you go around.
You should add the Mexico Road Course as well.
I mean, maybe if you could.
I think you got to go to Mexico. You got to go to the Circuit of the Americas. You got to go to Canada.
Yeah,
that
I think you got to go to Canada. I think you got to go to Canada. The Pinty Series is big up there. Go to Canada.
Right.
I don't know if the cars would fit at Canadian Tire, but hey, maybe Canadian Tire. Who knows? It's still, and then you go to Michigan, and then from going to Michigan, you start your tour over again, basically.
Right.
So it goes Michigan, and then it goes Kansas, and then you come back down to Daytona. You start your second half of the year.
Yeah,
that's how I would do it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there, but obviously changes need to be made to the schedule.
Yep.
I like the idea of the West Coast swing. I like the timing of it, but there's definitely changes that need to be done.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing how Steve Phelps goes about things with that. But as we move on here, I think it's safe to say we can throw in the towel on the aero package at this point in the year.
I am trying
5 races in. Or 4 races in.
I'm trying my best to be like, all right, aero package, yeah, because I had hope. I had hope for it. I was like, all right, I think the aero package is
You were one of the
fine.
people, yeah, all postseason there, you were or all off season, you were going for it. You liked it. I've always been skeptical of it. I liked. You were one of the few people that kind of got me excited for it.
Well, I got
looked
excited.
at it and said, "All right, this does have a chance to be good."
I got excited for it because I thought, all right, it'll take the worst teams and it'll give them a chance to give us some more Cinderella stories, and it'll take the best teams and it will stop them from driving away from the field.
You know what that's been so far?
And when Kyle Busch literally drove away from the field on Sunday, I was pissed. I was sitting there like, didn't we just develop a package that would stop this from happening? Like I'm watching.
I loved your tweet. I love it. Dustin tweeted the other day, Sunday night, I think it was, that you were like sending a complaint to like a NASCAR forum or something, and it said, if I wanted to watch Kyle Busch win by 5 seconds, at least make the cars go faster.
Like, look, if nothing is going to change and I want him going 200 miles per hour into the corner, that's all I want. Like, if we're not going to go with raw speed and 900 horsepower, because I get it. All right, manufacturers want less horsepower. It's cheaper to develop new engines. This is why we're doing this, to bring in Honda, bring in, Hyundai, bring in these guys and be like, hey, build cars.
Honda won't show up if the racing doesn't change.
But if it's going to be the difference between Kyle Busch winning by 10 seconds and Kyle Busch winning by 5 seconds and Kyle Busch winning by 10 seconds quicker so I can get on with my evening, then whatever. I don't care. It has not changed. It still sucks. It's all aero dependent. I'm really annoyed. I'm really annoyed with it because it's like I want it I just want them to be fast. I want them fine. Let's put it all into the driver's hands. Let's overcorrect now. Let's go 2,000 horsepower. Let's go all mechanical grip. Let's go no downforce. Have racing vans with 200 horsepower engines at this point.
Let's go with the new no downforce.
No downforce. The car is 5 feet. Let's just get 20 trucks with lift kits and put 1,000 horsepower in each.
Now that'd be popular with the fans out there in Tennessee.
And let's just go until they burn.
Go until they burn.
Go until all the engines blow, because the racing has just been so boring. It's been so boring.
Now, Dustin, I hope you don't run for office again, because cheering for a bunch of Duramax trucks going until the engines blow up will not be good for your political campaign.
I'm just the racing.
No, I get what you feel, what you're saying. No, it's frustrating, because this was supposed to be the fix that got us through. This was supposed to be make the racing better. All it's been is the restarts are cool for 2 laps, and then the leaders are gone, and now instead of people being 6-7 seconds behind, people are 25 seconds behind. Some way, somehow, NASCAR has just messed this up worse. Somehow, and I had beyond what it already was, and so now it's just slow cars running the same way that they did last year.
I had to actively tell myself, you want to watch Sunday's race. I had to actively tell myself the week before, you want to watch this race. I've had to actively say to myself, stop cleaning the kitchen and watch NASCAR. I've never, and I don't know if it's because I'm mellowing out as I get older, but I've never had to do that before. I've never had to say to myself, look, with the exception of when the Texans have sucked in seasons, I've never had to sit myself down and say, you are going to watch this sporting event and try to find enjoyment in it somewhere. And that's what I did with that race. That's what happened.
Yeah, and so 31 races still left this year.
Thank God this week's a short track. Oh, thank God it's Martinsville.
Is there anything NASCAR can do right now? Because, I don't think that it can afford to, look at the fading fan base that the sport has right now.
Well, it's interesting because...
and say, you guys have to wait till 2021.
Well, it's interesting because while it's, you say fading fan base, but NASCAR ratings have been on the rise this year. So I don't know if the new package got people to tune in, but I guess what you have to say is you got to sit the drivers down and say, all right, how can we put this back into the driver's hands? Like, I get the horsepower. I'm fine if we don't need 100. We don't need 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
But we need to sit down and say, okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with the cars being slow, but the cars better be racy. We better see some good side-by-side racing if the cars are going to be slow.
And we didn't see racy, we just saw slow.
I think that, I think part of it is the tracks are just awful. You put these cars in, California should 100% be a restrictor plate race.
It should be a race where you're trying to get 210.
Right. It should absolutely be the same package as Daytona. Because there has not been a good race at California since 2013 with, Jimmy John or Logano and Hamlin wrecking each other, Kyle Busch passing him in the last lap. Yep. Before that, I don't think there had ever been a good race at California.
It's not a good track for racing.
It is a terrible track. NASCAR made a good move by going out west and, building a track out there, but they failed miserably. And now, as these cars become more aerodynamically tuned and precise, things have gotten really bad. And, California, you gotta start considering something drastic to change California, because it sucks because NASCAR is stuck in this situation. They have these $1 million racetracks where California, Texas, all these tracks that were built by these millionaires that were brought in to build the fan base. The only problem is the tracks are hot garbage. The racing at these tracks is puts you to sleep kind of stuff, and it's not like a racetrack isn't like a football stadium where, if it's bad, you can tear it down and build a new one in a year. It doesn't work like that at these massive facilities that are 2 miles long.
Look at a place like California. It's like, if you're going to have the big tracks, then you need to make it a state fair type of thing where the race is just a side, right? This is something that Las Vegas, to their credit, has done really well. They've made it an event. It's an event at the track, and the race is just part of the event. California, it's run down. They need to redo it. They need to make the concourse, they need to make a fancy seating area where people are in the shade and the race is just kind of going on. That's what they need to do and make it a fan experience and say, okay, might not look good on TV, but the fans are going to have fun here.
Right. So, real quickly here, before we move on to Martinsville, Adam Stern, friend of the show, did he steal breaking news from Dustin?
I think he did.
Dustin, give us your investigative report.
I have receipts, Mr. Stern. No, so this morning, every Tuesday morning or afternoon sometimes, the NASCAR entry lists come out. And on the entry list are sponsors. So at 9:30 this morning, I had noticed that STP was not sponsoring Bubba Wallace in the STP 500.
Now, does he have a sponsor for this?
He does. Okay. It's Transportation Impact.
Somehow he has been, I have to give Richard Petty Motorsports credit for, at the beginning at Daytona, they're like, yeah, we have sponsorship for 6 races this year, but we're still going to run full time. And then they're sponsored every race.
I mean, I think they have, Richard Petty has, they have associate sponsors. They have so many associates. They just don't have primaries, and that's a fine way to go. It's the JTG method. So, I tweet at Bob Pockgrass, and I'm like, hey, STP is not on Bubba's car. That's weird.
Yeah.
And then at 10:50, STP writes me back and says, hey, we're not, well, let me find Adam Stern's news that he stole from me.
Now, let me clear the record here as Dustin searches for his news. We love Adam Stern. He's come on with us before.
This is totally in a joking sense.
He's been awesome to the show. We had a really cool interview with him.
So Adam Stern takes the tweet that STP writes me, puts it in a web border, and he says, while STP won't be a primary sponsor at Martinsville this year, we will continue to support the number 43 team as an associate sponsor for every race this season and carry our partnership into the 48th year. So Adam Stern takes that, puts it in the border, and says, STP is not currently scheduled to serve as a primary sponsor. He literally took their tweet back to me. So I'm taking credit for that news because I asked the question and got the answer.
Dustin with the big J journalism
the big double J journalism here, asking the questions that you want to know about your NASCAR backmarking teams. And then they went on to find out, and everybody was like, oh, is this the end of RPM? Well, what's happening at STP is that they've been sold to Energizer. Right. So this year, the $1 billion budget, the $1.25 billion, it's consuming its marketing budget this year. So they're, the move is going to boost their, Armor All, STP Motor Oil. So I think STP will be back. They're not leaving the sport per se. I think it's they got sold. Things are changing. Right. Maybe we see an Energizer Bubba Wallace car at some point. You never know. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Going back, as Dustin finishes up his hard work as an investigative Big J journalist over here.
Santana reporter. You won't forget it.
We do have an important race this week. Our first short track. Dustin, it couldn't come at a better time because, like you said, we're at the point where it's like, okay, got to tune into NASCAR this week. But Martinsville is one of those tracks where you get excited for it because last year in this race, Clint Boyer won for the first time since 2012. And in the fall, we had one of the best races of the season with Joey Logano punting Martin Truex, and Martin Truex saying he won't win the war. But
when
then
Joey Logano actually wins the war.
Joey Logano did win the war. So we always see a lot of good racing here, always some sort of temper.
Joey Logano either being spin or spinning someone.
Right.
Death taxes.
So always a fun race. Jimmy Johnson.
Still mad at Matt Kenseth. Anyway, keep going.
Jimmy Johnson, one of the best drivers of all time at Martinsville. He has 9 wins in his 34 career starts. The only people with more wins at Martinsville than him were Richard Petty with 15, Darrell Waltrip with 11, and Jeff Gordon with 9. So I guess Johnson's right up there.
I think one of the things I really forget about because he's such the hee-haw hit guy, Darrell Waltrip is actually one of the old-time great drivers. You never think about that, and then you're like, Darrell Waltrip has like 50 wins here. It's like,
because
what?
He's such a lunatic in the booth.
And it's like, he was actually like a Hall of Fame driver. Like,
he's got all these, annoying catchphrases, and 30 years ago, this guy was actually good at something. But yeah, so anyway, Jimmy Johnson, Denny Hamlin are the guys to beat here. The only guys, the only active drivers with a career average finish under 10 here. Hamlin's been really good at his home track. I think Richmond is his home track, but it's close.
Darrell Waltrip has 84 wins.
Yep. Yeah, Johnson has. If Johnson wins this weekend, he'll tie Darrell Waltrip all time. So that'll be interesting. But Logano, most recent winner, Clint Bowyer won there as well. Who are we looking for to have a big race this weekend?
Jimmy Johnson should have a good weekend. JTG cars should have a good weekend. They always have a good weekend. Bubba Wallace might be a sneaky candidate for a top 15 this weekend. Hamrick might be a sneaky candidate, but I think we'll have the usual suspects. Pulling up last year's winners just so I can see.
Is this the race where Martin Truex finally pulls it off, wins a short track race?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, that's my answer as well.
Sorry, he's not winning the damn war. But so who do I look at? Like Joey Logano will be good. Hamlin will be good. Busch will be good. Keselowski's always good here. Chase Elliott is good here. Daniel Suarez is sneaky good here. Had a top 10 in the fall race last year.
I think Kurt Busch could come out and win this race.
Kurt Busch.
Busch is such a good short tracker. He's come around. He's come close a couple of years in a row at Martinsville.
This has the feel of the Kurt Busch win, of the Kurt Busch from, Mr. Where did he come from type of win. Right. I definitely think Kurt Busch is a good pick.
Okay, so 4 minutes to go here. Let's do our fantasy picks for the week. Through 4 weeks now, I am beating Dustin by 18 points. 290 to 308 in our backwards point system.
I don't understand it, but it's okay.
Nobody gets.
Who picked first last time?
I picked first last time. So
I
picked first this time.
All right, we're taking Denny Hamlin.
Wow, Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, Denny Hamlin.
I am going with the two Penske drivers who've been the best drivers in the sport so far.
You're a mean human being.
I'm what now? A mean human being.
I can't swear on this show, but I would have swears for you, young man. Swears for you. I'm going to take Clint Bowyer with my next one.
Clint Bowyer, winner last year, of course. Broke the streak. Also won at Michigan after that.
And then I get one more right now while I'm sitting here. I'm going to take the other Penske driver, Ryan Blaney.
Ryan Blaney. Well, Dustin, I thank you for your kind service because I'm taking the Busch brothers, Kurt and Kyle.
Okay, good for you. I'm gonna take Chase Elliott because I'll take Chase Elliott.
Elliott, I don't know about Elliott right now because, I'd like to pick him because he has good stats at this track, but he was the same way at Phoenix. Elliott has done really well at Phoenix, but I don't think Hendrick has cars fast enough right now to race for top 10s, no matter what the track is.
And then after taking that guy, I'm going to take Mr. Kevin Harvick for my last one.
Mr. Kevin Harvick, back in the field.
It'll be a Kevin Harvick. I think he has a chance to come out. Well, his finishes, excluding Daytona, 4th, 9th, 4th. Like, Kevin Harvick's been okay. He hasn't been what we expect him to be, but he's been good.
All right, so my last two picks, I am going to go. The first one's going to be Eric Almirola, who's just run really well all year long this year. And I'm going to take Ricky Stenhouse, too.
Ricky boy.
Stenhouse has quietly been a top 10 driver every week of the year so far.
No, this package has been really good for Ricky.
I think that this, last year we thought was going to be his breakout year. It didn't turn out to be that way. I think that, this is the year that he can win a race at a track other than Daytona Talladega.
Who do you think?
I don't think it'll be on speed. I think he'll, get lucky with strategy or, the same way Chase Elliott won a race last year.
All right, so we don't have much time left. Truck race, who do you got?
Oh, man. Grant Enfinger's been really good this year. How cool would it be if Ross Chastain came out and won?
That would be actually really cool.
I think it'll probably be, Moffitt there.
The truck race is always
You have one more pick
to
go, by the way, here.
Oh, I have one more pick?
Yeah. Because you only have 5.
I only have 5. So let's go with Daniel Suarez. Right? No, Jimmy Johnson. Boom confetti.
Jimmy Johnson.
Right. He's still on the board.
Okay, so truck race point real quickly here in our final minute.
Yeah, so who do you think is going to win the truck race, basically? Last year's winner was Gianni Ciata.
Yeah.
Off of the fall race. John Hunter Nemechek won it last year in the spring.
Yeah.
Texas Roadhouse. Who do you think's going to win? Who do you think's going to win?
I think it's probably going to be Moffitt or Sauter. This is the kind of race that the veterans dominate in the Truck Series. The guys who have been there before.
I think Moffitt gets that win this week.
All right, that's all we have for you tonight on the Inside Groove. Promise we'll be back on our usual Monday time slot. I feel like
we're not committing to it, but
I feel like we haven't been there in like the last 2 months. But we'll try our hardest to get back to a regular Monday time slot for next week. For Dustin, I'm Nick. Thanks to Zach for pushing all the buttons in the studio. We'll see you next Monday, hopefully, right here, 7 o'clock, Northwest Access TV and Facebook Live. This is the Inside Groove right here on Northwest Access TV.